Now we're going to consider some of the words that were placed upon the cross. In verse 26, it says, "And the description of the charge against them read, 'King of the Jews.'" That was the title on top of the cross, "King of the Jews." The crime would often be placed either on a sign around the criminal's neck, again as a visual deterrent against crime. Well, his crime was really a truly ironic statement that was intended to offend, really. He is called the King of the Jews. And certainly you know how irony works, right? Irony is you say the opposite of what's really happening, and the contrast is brought out. So you see that it's humorous or that it's tragic. And so the people, the Romans, placing this upon it, they thought it was so ironic, so nearly humorous, that this man is the King of the Jews. And so it was put there as an ironic statement against him. And also to the Jewish nation as a whole. Say, this is your king? There was no friendliness really between the Romans and the Jews and vice versa. So this is just double irony to humiliate the man being crucified and to humiliate the people whom he represents. Behold, your king. But in that layer upon layer of irony, we see there's even a third layer of irony in all that mockery and all that joking, that in fact it is true that he is the King of the Jews, that he is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. And so we just see layer upon layer, but God gets the last ironic statement in. You mock him as king, but he truly is your king, is what this is saying. And we see in verse 27 that Jesus is numbered among the transgressors. It's an Old Testament prophecy about the Messiah, that he would be numbered among the transgressors. 27 says, "And with him they crucified two robbers, one on his right and one on his left." It talks about those passing by and deriding him. But Isaiah 53 speaks about the coming Savior and that he would be numbered with the transgressors. As Mount Calvary or Golgotha is there and people would pass by, they certainly would. Jerusalem was jammers with people, filled with people. And as they passed by, maybe one would say to another, "Oh, how many transgressors are up there?" I count 1, 2, 3 transgressors. He looks totally guilty. It almost pains me to read it that he's mocked. That insult is added to his severe injuries. 28 down to verse 32. "And with him they crucified two robbers, one at his right and one at his left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, 'Ah, you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross.' And also the chief priests with the scribes mocked him to one another, saying, 'He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we might see and believe.' Those that were crucified with him also reviled him." We see there's 3 groups of people that are mocking Jesus. The random passers-by, the ones that are crucified next to him, and the religious leaders. Criminals are agreeing with the religious leaders, and the religious leaders are agreeing with just the crowds. And there's rarely something that 3 of those would agree on, but they all unite to poke fun at this dying man. And we see a real consistent theme that I think Mark wants us to understand, is that there is so much irony going on here. That what they would say to insult him, what they would say to add insult to injury, it's in fact true. They say of him, you claim to be powerful, and you claim to be the one who can rebuild the temple in only 3 days? Look at you. You are powerless. And they intend to insult him and to mock him by saying these things. John chapter 2 describes Jesus, accurately saying what has been taken out of context many times we've seen in the Gospel of Mark so far. In John chapter 2, he says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up again. And John explains that he's talking about the temple of his own body. And saying that, making the audacious claim really, that his body himself is the temple that will be destroyed and will be raised up. You have to understand, what's a temple? A temple is the place where God meets with man. The temple is the place where sacrifice is made. The temple is where that which separates is removed so that there can be relationship between God and man. And Jesus is saying, well, that's me. And I will be destroyed, torn apart, but I will be rebuilt in 3 days. And so as it's happening, as he is being torn down, as he is being destroyed, they're saying, you're the one who said the temple would be destroyed and you'd rebuild it. Ha ha ha. But in fact, that's exactly what's happening. Where the new and better, the true place where humanity can meet with a holy God is in the moment is being destroyed so that it will be raised up 3 days later. Layer upon layer of irony. It's a bit easier for us to see it in the next insult where the religious leaders say, I guess not really to him, but they kind of mutter it to each other. Well, here we see the religious leaders of Israel not even saying it to the dying man himself, but they turn to their friend and they make this snide joke saying, he saved other people, but he can't even save himself. It's an awful thing that they would tease or make jokes at the expense of a dying man. But how much more awful is that it's true and they don't know it. They should have known this. They should have known that the Messiah would come and that he would not be saved so that he would save others. Daniel chapter 9, Isaiah 53, Psalm 22 talk about the Savior, the Messiah, giving himself up so that others could be saved. Saving others, but himself not being saved. And they make snide, cute little comments to themselves about it. It's truly ironic in the most tragic but wonderful way. Because he did not save himself. And we, others, we are saved. We can reclaim those cruel words said to Jesus. And we can turn them to worship. We can reverently say almost these same things back to him. We can say that, Jesus, you're the one who is the true temple of God. You were torn down, but you raised it up after 3 days. We can reverently say that to Jesus. We can say, Jesus, you are the Savior of others at the expense of yourself. We worship you because of that. So ashamed we can hear our voice among the scoffers, we can also reverently reappropriate those things that were meant for evil and use those words for good and turn them into worship.